$1,000. They got paid all of it for $1,000. That's with the picnic tables and everything.
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. If everyone could stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Adriana, can we do roll call, please?
Tanya Davis,
Here?
Brian Rummel,
Here.
Libby Wyatt, Fritz Spence,
Here.
Vanessa Battaglia.
We do have a quorum. Next up, we have our 2025 council appointments for this year. The first would be to appoint a president for 2025.
I'd like to nominate Tanya Davis.
My second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion carries. And I would like to appoint Ryan Rummel as the vice president.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we need to approve the meeting agenda, and I think we got it corrected here, so we don't have any changes.
Yep, no changes.
So I need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And a motion to approve the minutes from the December 16th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 16th, 2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. New business. So we're have the task of reappointing some of the commissions. There's a few seats that are open. The first one we have is the RDC, which all the current members have decided that they'd like to stay. So I would recommend that we keep the same, which is Scott Meyer, Amy Lawson, Chris McCreight, Ed Brand, and Dan Hughey. And the school representative will be Stacy Nielsen. So I guess we probably should vote on keeping them three or,
Yeah, the way it's structured, the council president appoints three
okay,
and the council as a whole then will appoint the other two.
okay. So I'll appoint Dan Hughey, Ed Brand, Chris McCreight. And then we need a,
I'll make a motion to appoint Scott Meyer and Amy Lawson to the RDC.
okay, for a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, RDC will remain the same. And thank you again, you guys, for you guys have done a great job this last year, so we really appreciate you. I only see one out here, Mr. Brand. Next, we have the Planning Commission, and it is one member that the president is to choose. So I'm going to choose Mr. Joe Murphy as the new member for the Planning Commission. I have not met Mr. Murphy. Hi, Joe. Thank you again for offering your service. Okay. And then we have council to appoint two resident citizen members to the Police Commission. Mr. Gene Akers, which is the current president of the Police Commission, and Ed Brand are both willing to retain their seat on the Police Commission. So we can look for a motion to reappoint those two gentlemen if so be.
We need a motion for that,
Now we do a motion for that.
for Gene and Ed.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to appoint Gene Akers, Ed Brand to resident members of the police commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next up, council to consider adding to the scope of the work for the Trails Project, and it would include scope of work to meet our obligation to Federal Highway and State Historic Preservation Office related to the James S. Merrill House. Adding the scope to the existing project, it could save the town as much as 80% of the cost to get that done. Joe?
Yeah, this is part of the obligation that we had, like you said, with the federal highway. For the James Merrill House, which is the older brick house on Maple Street, heading south of town where the new trail's going in. We're required to install a historical sign. And there's a lot that goes into that sign as far as the research, the photographs, the design, and it can't be just a metal sign like what we would typically go out and put up on the street or something. So by including that in this project, it was not included originally. The consultant gave us let's see, I got it here. It was a price of like $37,000 to do that portion of the work. And we've been awarded already the 80%, at least the MPO is awarded up to $33,708 at this point. So that would leave us to pay the 80% of the sign design and all the other work that goes on. No, that doesn't count the cost of the sign. Include.
Yeah, well, we've had several conversations in our in-depth meetings about this sign.
The,
It's just,
The sign, what we're hoping is that the Trails project, understanding so far has come in about $400,000 under budget. So if that's the case, then we shouldn't need additional funds for the construction and having it put up. If we don't go this route, then obviously the full amount is on the town. It's something that we're required to do by 2027. So this gives us an opportunity to add this to the project that's going on and save those funds.
yeah, I think we definitely should.
How big is the sign?
That I don't know. That's what they determine. They come up with historical photos and the data. I think, Linda Weintraut is who they're using for part of the historical stuff that they're working on, but I don't know the details of it. Seems to be a little more convoluted than just coming up with something, throwing it on the sign.
Has to be a specific font.
Yeah.
Joe,
It has to be a specific size.
can you speak up into the microphone a little bit more? Sorry.
Yes, it's, the sad part about it is he doesn't even want it. So, the person that, that's the sad part, but it has to be done. So,
So do you need a motion? Or what do you need?
Yeah, I'll be preferred. I mean, just.
Council, do I have any questions? Do you have any questions? Anybody? From council?
I'd like to know if the public has any questions.
Yeah.
It doesn't, also it says it could save up to 80%. What
Yeah.
is that?
I saw Dave's out there. He's got his hand up. He's.
Okay, Dave, yes or no?
And
just let him explain.
also request for everybody to speak into the microphones more.
It's David Benazil Anderson, MPO, also known as MCOG. So yes, this is part of the grand scope of the project for the trail. Just to give you background, because I know it is detailed and convoluted, as Tanya you noticed. This is kind of my wheelhouse, what I went to school for, as well as planning, so I do understand it pretty well. So anytime you use federal funds, you've got to make sure, like I say, don't hurt the birds, bees, bunnies and trees, as well as historic resources with those federal funds. The consultant that was hired a sub-consultant more well-trained in this area, which is Linda Weintraut and Associates, sub-consultant. So during the process of review, which is done on the entire project, what happens is that they identify if there's anything like this that needs to be done. And it goes through a whole process with the State Historic Preservation Office, Indiana Landmarks Foundation, as well as NDOT and the consultant. And Joe's been involved. I've been involved throughout the process. So initially, just in case anybody wonders, why is this being added later? Because initially when the consultant, scoped out the project, well, it wasn't needed. We didn't know. So now we know, and there's an agreement. That agreement is with, specifically, as Joe knows, with Federal Highway Administration, State Historic Preservation Office, and Town of Fortville. So it is on you to make sure it happens by 2027. It makes sense to go ahead and do it while this project is open. There's already funds there and I can give you funds. I can't give you funds in another project just to do this thing. It would be a lot of extra cost that's really unnecessary. So now that we've kind of determined that, the initial consultant gave the updated estimate saying, hey, we've got to do these things. So that's why they've got to do certain things, submit to NDOT to get some plans. What's that sign going to look like? What's going to be the content of the sign? Where's it going to go? How much concrete? Get it installed. Basically make a plan set, work with Linda Weintraut to determine what the text is that's going to be on there. It does have to be approved by the State Historic Preservation Office. So that's why there's cost. There's lots of people involved, unfortunately, to make all these submittals and determinations. So upon we getting this started, I think, Joe, you may already have a contract already kind of moving forward with your prime consultant. And so that what happens is that because to answer the public's question, during the review, we identified what are the historic resources. This was one, that home was identified as significant for the town of Fortville. That person who originally built the house was the person who laid out the town of Fortville and so on and so forth. So the text of that sign is going to say something to that effect. And it is not up to the property owner. It's not up to the town. It's not up to NDOT. But it is an agreement between the State Historic Preservation Office, and it's all required as part of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 when you're using federal funds. So
That house wasn't on the historical register though, was it?
no. So something a lot of people don't understand, you don't have to be on the National Register to, because that's a separate application, and all a National Register application does is gives you prestige and an opportunity to apply for grant funding. That's separate from, road funding. So that's what it does. It doesn't prohibit that. National Register listing does not prohibit that person from tearing down the whole house, changing windows, doing anything to it. It's just prestige and access to grants. Obviously, if you access the grants, then they're going to say what you can and can't do with the house. But in this case, since there's federal funds involved and it's important per the act, and it was deemed that way, you've got to throw some money at it to make sure this sign goes up. So in the long run, it's going to be a great thing for the community. And it's pretty important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be significant. It's just a brick home by itself. Wouldn't be a big deal, but it's the person who built it and why it's important to the town. That's the reasoning behind it, what they call the historical significance, reason why it makes sense. So to do this, yes, what's happening is that we're now, Joe has signed a contract to get the things done, to get it submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office, to get it going so that we can get those flat plans set to the contractor so he can actually install it. The property owner does get to have some say in where it goes, and that is being coordinated with the, I believe, your prime consultant and Linda Weintraut will be coordinating directly with the property owner as to where that goes. It does have to be somewhat proximity to his house. It may not be directly on his property. It may be it's going to be in the right of way of the road anyway, because you can't put it on private property. So that's kind of that help explain what's going on.
Well, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What was the project to which this is being added?
It's the Mount Vernon Trails project. So
Okay,
it's
not really there, right? Or
it is. It's
on
right
the trail.
along the trail that's installed.
So it's getting extended a portion.
Right. It's the portion that's done right now up to 200. That's almost done, or I think it's completely done, or this is the last piece, I believe.
This is the house out north. We're talking about the house.
It's south on Fortville Pike, right before you get to 200.
Before the stoplight.
Before the
Before the new
stoplight.
stoplight.
The new stoplight.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look off to the west, there's a brick home. It's kind of sets off the side.
Signs are So, you know, I'm for a historical sign, but I also wondered, it says here by adding the scope to the existing project, by adding the scope of making a sign, adding that to the existing project of paving the trail, it could save the town 80% of the cost. The cost of what? The trail?
So Joe's basically asking you for the accept the funds that I'm giving you to make this difference up. So you don't have to pay 100%. You're gonna have to pay 100%,
Well-
whether you do it now under this project or in the future, as long as you do by 27.
I'm still, it's still like clarification. So
Okay.
adding a sign to the trail
Mhm.
will could save the town 80% of the cost of what? The trail or the sign?
Just what's being done to do those tasks of the sign, like identifying what the sign's gonna look like, where it's gonna go, the concrete, any subgrade, and the content, all those costs associated with that.
So the sign.
Just the sign.
So in other words.
Yeah.
Adding the sign.
Yeah.
Will cost only 20% of what it might have otherwise cost if we had done it the other way.
Across the town roughly 20%.
Yeah, it was 37.5, I think, is your contract, I believe, and then we're giving 80% of that. So you're just accepting that 80% of 37.5.
So. Okay, so the 37.5, what is that?
That's for those additional
Is
costs.
that $37,000
Mhm.
for a sign?
For a sign
And-
and all the submittals and the requirements and things,
If
and the
we-
plan set that needs to be done, a couple plan
And
pictures.
if we didn't do the sign, I'll just kind of ask my questions on behalf of maybe everybody. Okay, so
Sure.
if we didn't do the sign, what impact would that have on the cost of the trail?
So you would have, no, they wouldn't be done as part of this project. I would not be able to give you any money for that cost. You are still required by federal law per the agreement for Federal Highway as a part of the whole process to install it by 2027. It's a separate document. And a Federal Highway will make sure it happens.
So we've accepted money to do a trail, but it comes with the requirement of making a sign.
Yes, through the process.
And
Once
we
yes.
have to do the sign.
Either
That's
way.
the term of the agreement of the money we received.
Either way, yes.
And if we were to violate that, that would be big problems, I guess. as
You would
well.
have to do it eventually. And I mean, they're not going to like fine you, but they're going to say you need to do this within a reasonable amount of time. Federal
Yeah.
Highway will talk to you
Or
about it.
else,
Yeah.
or else big problems. And then
Unnecessary things.
big problems. So we're doing the sign, and if we were to refuse right now and do it later, we would have to pay the whole cost. But if we do it now, you can give us 80% of the cost of the sign.
Because we have an open purchase order and it's kind of already ongoing. We're kind of tagging it on to this project. Say it's a part of this project anyway. It's just, that makes sense.
Okay.
I know it's confusing.
Now I'm seeing nods. I was seeing shakes, and I see nods. Okay.
Okay, all right. So eventually, what this is gonna do is you're accepting this money that I'm giving you. Joe has the contract for the consultant to get them going on these additional tasks.
Yeah,
And
and
then
to be
we'll-
clear, it's 37.5. I misspoke earlier.
So one final question, maybe this is for Joe, or whatever, but you mentioned that this only came up after we agreed to take the money to do the trail. And so I'm just kind of curious, how often does that happen that we do a deal with the state with, I believe this was an NDOT deal, right?
I would say it's an NDOT deal. It's funded through MPO and with state money, state and federal funds. As part of the grant that we received. His trail was installed as part of the contract with Broadway. And NDOT took on this project for us and to save money in the construction and the inspection of installation.
It's pointing out that we accepted funds, state and federal funds, to make a trail for which the requirement came on later after we already made that agreement, which will require costs from the town. I just want to put that out there. And I was just wondering, how often does that happen? Because I would think that requirements such as signs would be something that would be part of the initial review process that should have been figured out so that when we agreed to do this deal, to accept the funds, we would have known, we should have had all of the information when we agreed in the first place.
It changed the price. If we had the details of the sign, the contract would have been higher, the award from the MPO would have been higher. It would have happened sooner rather than now. So if something happened that they did not require us to move forward with the sign, then we would have saved that money.
I know we'd need a sign or whoever.
So I can answer. So
Yeah.
this happens all the time. Happens all the time. So for instance, when you use the federal funds, we got to do the NEPA environmental review, which includes this historic review, as well as trees and other things that I said before. It's a part of a process. You don't know the things going into it. You think you might, you do your best guess at what's going to be included, but you can't know until you start getting into the nitty gritty of it. This happens all the time. For instance, if you have wetlands in your area, along the project, they may have been identified initially and they may not. The rule of thumb is if there's cattails there, there's probably wetlands. Sometimes, depending on how important it is with wetlands, you may have the DNR may say, hey, you've got too many wetlands here, it's too large, you're gonna have to do a wetland delineation report, which tacks on a whole bunch of extra costs. I don't know how much, maybe $10,000 onto a project that is now required. We wouldn't have known it going into that until they got into the nitty gritty going through that review process. So it is an iterative process where you're going back and forth. We try to assess all those needs up front before I ever give you any money. And that's part of what we're doing with this RFI. Last time I talked about trying to figure out what are things that we get a good estimate. So we have a good idea. Are we going to need a wetland delineation? Are we going to need anything, historic resources? Because yes, oftentimes it is like, oops, oh yeah, and is it fair? No, I get where you're coming from completely, but it does happen a lot. I try to, what I've instilled in our policies, try to avoid that. NDOT does not always do that. And I will correct that it is funding that we created that the town requested the trail years ago, 2015, I think. And we split it into 3 phases and we got this first phase done. The third phase, if you will, was already done right in front of the school. So you've seen those portions done already. But what NDOT, like Joe said, we said, hey, if you're going to do this Broadway project, we didn't know we were going to do the Broadway project because that was a stellar community application app that came through. So, well, if you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Let's save some money here. Can we tack on our project, at least the first phase, because it's right next to it? And you save probably about $500,000 by doing that. It was kind of a pain. Just like, you add more people into the mix, it adds more, things you got to consider. But in the long run, you saved a lot of money. So yes, we still are at this impasse where review happened. The consultant did not incorrectly not give you an estimate that didn't include this. They didn't know. We didn't know until the SHPO said, you have to do this. And now it happens.
So just for all of our reference, when we enter into these agreements where we accept these funds, as one of my old coworkers put it, then the add-ons come, then come all the add-ons. And so we can expect that there are typically add-ons that come after these things that perhaps maybe going forward, maybe we should budget for that or think about that.
Absolutely. And that is exactly why I have that red flag investigation up front. NDOT, when they do projects, I talked about the red flag investigation on the new trail project we talked about last time. And that is basically an assessment. What are we going to hit? Are there going to be wetlands? Are there going to be floodplains? Are there going to be historic resources? And we create those in our office and provide them up front so we get a good estimate. NDOT does not do that. It is a required part of the entire process, but when NDOT only requires it to be done after the project starts, I don't think that makes any sense for the reasons you're asking.
Right. If this were an engineering project, it would be filed as a risk up to 40%. And there would be a cost associated with it. And we would alert our customers that there's a potential cost risk associated with what they're asking us to do. And so I'm not seeing that here. And so that's why I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I would absolutely say that anytime you do any kind of federal project, there's always going to be things that are unknowns. Even if you get into digging, into construction, there were unknowns. You've heard about it, Tanya. You definitely have heard about those during our meetings with that. So this happens all the time. It's unfortunate. We try to put our best foot forward, cross our fingers. And I really try to do that for you guys, for all of our constituencies, for sure. So we're working on that RFI right now. I was going to tell you that, but since I'm here talking about it, we're working on it. Joe, we talked about it today. So we'll be getting that so you can get some good estimates and hopefully all of those things will be incorporated and we won't have any surprises. Cross your fingers, but you never know. So I hope that helps everybody understand.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. You explained that a lot better than I could have.
I'll make a motion to approve the work on the James S. Meyer historical sign to the scope of the project.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving on. Council to consider first reading of ordinance 2024-1A, I believe. 2025-1A, a voluntary annexation of 1927 West State Road 234, Mount Vernon School Performance Enhancement Center. Adam?
All right. Good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklikowski, the Planning and Building Director for the town.
This particular request is a pretty straightforward and easy one. As you know, the vast majority of the Mount Vernon School District campus out at State Route 234 and County Road 200 West is all within town limits. There is one small piece that is called the Performance Enhancement Center. It's on the south side of 234. And it was property that the school district acquired relatively recently, 2011, 2012, in that timeframe. So we simply wanted to incorporate it into town limits, really for emergency response and just to make sure that the entire school district land holdings in that area are all in town limits. It'll also allow the town to be able to annex further south in the future. So lastly, it has been approved via resolution by the school district board. So with that, if you have any questions, this is just first reading. From here, it would go to technically a public hearing in front of council. We've already put a notice in the paper for that per law, and then it would come back to you all for adoption and include a fiscal plan as all required under Indiana law. So if you have any questions, happy to address those. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2025-1A, voluntary annexation of 1927 West State Road 234.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have a discussion on to update the Broadway Master Plan and Town Comprehensive Plan. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I would defer to Councilman Fence.
Oh, okay.
The reason why I wanted to do a comprehensive plan, Dick and I talked this summer about some landscaping that didn't get done, and I had him look over what a contract to another company. And he basically said we could kind of, I don't know, do it ourselves, but we kind of need a plan, right? To get that to send to NDOT. Is that so? In the whole thing, I was wanting to discuss if we could revisit the comp plan since we didn't get the landscaping and the trees or anything like that during our through NDOT. The comp plan kind of was like not even addressed for the landscaping. I'd like to rework the comp plan to get it back in there, but I don't want us to do it. I'd like a committee of people working together to get it accomplished. So I brought Dave in to kind of talk about, it's been 11 years since we visited the comp plan. It's probably a good time to revisit it. Thanks, Dave. Well, and let me just.
We did look at some of it.
Yeah, let me just preface it by the current comprehensive plan that the town has is from 2014. And then we also have a separate downtown master plan, which was done at that time. And then in 2015, 16, there was a Broadway master plan that was done. And then there was a South Madison master plan that was done as well. So we basically have, I would say, think of it as one comprehensive plan with 3 area plans. And that's pretty common in a lot of jurisdictions. As a result of those plans, in order to make that vision come to life, there were development standards that were codified into the actual zoning ordinance, into local law, to make that vision happen when properties redevelop. And so I would say that it's definitely good practice to update the comprehensive plan. Usually every 7 to 10 years is a good window to look at. If you'll recall, we recently updated the comprehensive plan land use map because that was woefully out of date, and that's been approved and that's on the books. So what I would like to know from a staff perspective is a little bit more detail as to what problem.
Well,
Is it landscaping that you're concerned about? Or
we, on Main Street, we built those bump outs. And there's not a really good plan to make those flower pots look really nice. It's just like an afterthought. And also along Broadway, we have a 10-foot sidewalk. There's nothing there. No planters. There's no planning of any kind of landscaping or anything. And I don't know, when we built those planters along the railroad tracks, what happens, we built these planters and then we don't maintain them. We don't think about what has to be done. Same thing, I want the comp plan to discuss snow removal and what we expect, because businesses come and look at Fortville and they gotta see if they want to invest in our town and bring commerce to town. But if it's nothing in the comp plan, we're not even planning for this. I'd like to at least talk about it to see what our plans are.
So to pinpoint, I guess the problem that you want to solve, as I understand it, is really beautification of the town via landscaping and maintenance.
Right, and the other thing I'd like to talk about is the signage. Right now, we're discouraging, like the sign at the Colonial Motel. We should be encouraging to keep that piece of history. Same thing with Libby's and my signs. We shouldn't be like penalizing by charging an extra $400 to keep a sign to make us look more unique. I don't think that we want to just redo Broadway. I think we need to discuss it after this length of time, is what the town really looks like.
Establishing standards for grandfathering in interesting historic.
Just looking up some planning, how they do Route 66. And there's some interesting stuff in towns that they're preserving stuff like that through the planning and grants to kind of make it look like it's from the 60s rather than make everything look like, McCourtsville or Fishers, or they're building these strip centers and they're all the same. When you go to Florida, it's like, okay, well, it looks like I'm in Danville. I mean, it's all the same, where we're constantly. Right now, I would rather let's put some plans together to make it look like, make it a destination where people want to come here, because that's my biggest argument, is we need to let people weigh in. We shouldn't just be making decisions. We should let everybody weigh back in, see what the town should look like.
Fortville's interesting because it's old.
Right.
That's what we've got going for us compared to other towns around us. I would agree to that.
Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Well, I would agree with Adam on many points about small area plans. It's very common once you have a comprehensive plan, you may have a new area you want to take a closer look at, and you're going to kind of focus in on that area. As far as problem solving, getting to the point you're trying to, the solutions to the problems you're trying to solve, there are many ways to do that. So I also agree that taking a fresh look at all of it, as in the comprehensive planning process, is a great way to do that. I did bring a resource today. I worked with, as a consultant years ago, I worked with a lot of small communities. I show this today. I worked with communities of 500, and they have 100 houses. They don't have a lot going on, but it's important to them. And it's good to kind of have that looking ahead. So I created a resource, kind of this is what a comprehensive plan is, and the very, very basic components. I have that. I'd like to hand it out to you guys. And I'll leave it at copies. Now, I'll briefly, I'm not going to read this. I'll let you take it home and peruse it. It's very, very basic. But when I'm going to a community of 500 and trying to explain what the heck a comprehensive plan is, it's got to be pretty basic. So in short, and I think Adam will agree with me on all these points, it's a roadmap for your community. That is so where are you at now? Where were you? And where do you want to go? And the ending result is kind of an action plan, kind of some goals and objectives. Anytime you make any plan, whether it's a financial plan or a business plan, so do you look at what I got, where I want to go, how do I get there? That's what a comprehensive plan is in its basic. Couple things that it is not. It is not a law. However, it does give you guidance as to what kinds of laws you might want to look to creating. Similar to when you update ordinances, you update your zoning map. We didn't know, we annexed, we didn't know what we were going to zone that. We're thinking in different ways. Things have happened. So there's it is going to direct you. Now, state law does say that basically whatever your ordinances you create for, especially when talking about zoning and development, it does have to have a correlation back to your comprehensive plan, which I'm pretty sure that yours do. So this talks about what is it, why do I need it, and what's in it. It has basic four components, like I talked about, an introduction, basically what have you done in the past, then your community profile, who lives here, what kind of resources do we have, what makes us unique, what do we want to save, what makes Fortville. And then you, like Fritz said, public participation, giving an opportunity for everyone to kind of chime in, because you got new population, you got people, you've done different things. You're like, I never thought about this before, but what if we could do this? The conversation that I think Fritz is talking about here. We've got these new things, but we need to kind of hone in on what we need to do next to make it even that much better. And then that action plan and goals and objectives. So that's what this document says. It's very short and sweet. So back to Fritz's first point when we talked back in the summer about the beautification of Broadway project. I have been on board with him from day one, and Joe knows this. I tried to coordinate that early on with NDOT way a long time ago. And Joe, you can attest to that. And I promised Fritz, I said, I'm going to keep Adam, and I did, but I didn't get anywhere because it was already kind of going along too far along. They couldn't add it in.
Could you describe what's the beautification you were trying to coordinate with NDOT?
Trees, tree grates, similar to Main Street. Maybe some planters, or we'll call them bollards so people don't get hit. The cars are going to hit that before it hits. And that's really when you start talking about beautification on a road project that's related to federal highway funds, it can't be called beautification. It has to be transportation or safety related. And we had that discussion before. After we had that discussion, which is probably the most important thing, which I've shared with, I think, Adam and Joe, I learned that you can do this by yourself along a state corridor, state route, because it's not your road, even though it's your road, it's not your road. You basically have to apply similar to like a driveway permit. That's just like when a new developer comes along and wants a curb cut on state road, they've got to apply. There's a whole process in place. NDOT developed this kind of document, and I provided that to Joe and Adam and Fritz, so we can share that on to you guys as well. It's available on NDOT's website and provide the link as well. And I was not aware of this document either until I started asking around. So basically, if you remember when NDOT started, if you remember around 465, when they started putting those art installations in around the not roundabouts, but
nobody takes care of anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But that kind of thing, they're like, how do we have it? We need to have a policy in place to allow us to do this, whatever. This is what that permitting process happens. So you figure out what you want to do, and you do have to have a plan. Now, whether it's a small area plan or a comprehensive plan, or does it need to be talked about in a comprehensive plan? You could, but I don't think you need to wait for that. Obviously, you have this new road, and you got springtime coming. You probably want to put up some planters or something, some hanging baskets or something. You probably need to get a permit for that because it's not your road, even though it's your road. Your community is going to see it. And the basic public doesn't understand that you don't have a lot of say, even though it goes through your community. So I would take a look at that permitting process. I would figure out a plan, whether you guys need to have a little committee to figure it out. Fritz comes and presents something, or you hire a consultant. It's all up to you. But yeah, going back to maintenance, you can put pretty stuff in, but if you don't maintain it, it's not going to be pretty stuff for long. So it doesn't matter if it's the road or it's sidewalk or if it's snow removal or planters or what have you. So that needs to be something that can be dealt with. Doesn't necessarily have to be dealt with in a comprehensive plan or with plan commission rules or permitting. It could just be done as a new policy. You can pass an ordinance and say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is how it's going to be funded, and so on and so forth, or you create a volunteer committee, like you've had your Main Street group in the past, do a lot of stuff to maintain that, or a business organization. So lots of methods you can do to address the issue. But for Broadway, it does have to be, since it's an NDOT road, you need to start there with what that is. So as soon as you guys figure that out, if you want our help in our office, we do have landscape architects and stuff that we can, coordinate with you guys and come up with an idea of what you might want. Second item is you talked about wayfinding and kind of rebranding in an email to me. And that is something that we can do. A lot of communities have wayfinding plans. Indianapolis has one where you have the signs go this way to the stadium, go this way to that, this historic things here. I don't think you have that yet. You don't necessarily have a plan for what are those signs going to look like? How many on a stick? What is the stick going to look like that they're going to stick on? That's a whole plan and a whole thing that you probably needs a little more thought, probably need a consultant to kind of do. And then you can incorporate that into ordinances because it's almost like a small area plan. And I'm sure Adam can lead you in the direction of what needs to do there. And I told Fritz asked us if we did that in our office, and we do that. We have landscape architects, like I said. So we're putting together a proposal now, and we'll be getting that to you to review what it might cost, and you can hire any consultant, but, we do have the staff, and we're always looking for money because, just like your 80-20 matches, in order to pay my salary, we have to come up with that 20 cents on the dollar too. So we do extra things to kind of do that. And we've done stuff for you guys before in the past, I believe. So last but not least, if you're interested in doing a comprehensive plan, like Adam said, 7 to 10 years is kind of a rule of thumb. Normally I always tell communities 10 years, especially if I'm dealing with a community in rural Indiana, 500 people, you're probably not going to need another comp plan in the next 10 years. But that's what I would tell them. Because we don't know what's going to happen. Since some of those communities I work with down there, well, I-69 came through. We knew it was coming. So they probably had a lot of change that they didn't know they're going to have. We tried to prepare for that in those planning processes, but so on. However, when you have a lot of, think about Fishers when it grew by leaps and bounds. They probably had not done a comp plan for quite a while. And when you are that progressive in change, probably every 5 years. And I think you're a community that's getting to that every 5 years kind of thing, because just think of all the things that have changed in the past 5 years. I know not just the road projects, but the development, the improvements, businesses have moved around, come and gone. So lots of things to consider. So I do think it's probably a good time to kind of reassess. You got these small area plans to take, you can incorporate all that, not necessarily get rid of them, but incorporate them all into that plan and say, point that new comp plan to these small area plans because they inform very specifically. There's an opportunity to do that. So there's your resource on what a comp plan is. That would be my recommendation to you. Adam is a certified planner just like me and many other people on my staff. So he's your resource locally. So he knows about all these things as well. So anybody have any questions?
Great explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what would be what's the recommendation, Fritz? Like, since you requested this,
Oh,
what do you
yeah.
have in mind?
Well, my recommendation would be that we revisit the comp plan and we put some committees together and we get owners and stakeholders back in and we relook at the comp plan, especially along Broadway, since it's the most that's going to be changing in the next few years.
So I'm sure a comp plan costs money.
Yeah.
Where does that funding come from to pay for a comp plan? I'm looking at you.
Well, I'm not talking about rewriting it. What I'm talking about is make adjustments to what is now. So it's not going to cost as much as, come on back up. It's not going to cost as much because what we're doing is just.
I'm just asking how much it's going to
Make
cost.
sure there's planning.
Yeah.
That's all.
Generally speaking, I would say the average cost $70,000 to $150,000 for new comprehensive plan. That's total cost. No,
This wants to do is just
And
touch on some things.
and update's a different story. So you would have to identify what you kind of want to look at. and kind of, because then you don't have to reinvent the proverbial wheel. You've already got one, right? So, and you've got all these extra plans too. So that is also negotiable with any consultant or contract. That happens all the time. You know, you just throw it all out, you know. There's general things you're gonna have to update. You know, you're gonna have different population data from the new census since 2014. So there's different things. So there's certain things that are gonna have to happen that will still cost, you know, for anybody. You're gonna have to public meetings, and there's gonna be handouts, and there's gonna be boards and things. You know, it's a whole process in place to involve the public. Because that's the whole point here, is to involve the public. We don't create it in a vacuum, because
Estimate, somebody was just gonna give us a recommendation where we can put trees and planters along Broadway. And it was like $15,000 to $17,000 for them to write up a plan. But that's pretty normal nowadays. If you're gonna have attorneys and engineers look at some, it's 15 to 20 grand easily.
Could that be like an addendum to the comp plan or something that could just be sort of, you know, prepared separately?
That I do not know.
But that was actually what my question was gonna be. I mean, do we actually tackle the comp plan, or do we look at the Broadway overlay plan that we have and just amend that, or create a landscape plan and just make that a separate document?
And since there's a whole permitting process, get somebody to jump right into that permitting process. See, I'm not familiar with it, so I can't really guide you. Whatever's required, get it together. Whoever wants to do that, put it together for you. Then find it out. And once you get stuff approved and in place, then you figure out, okay, do we do this? Who's going to pay for putting in the planners? You know, where we're going to come money? Is it Redevelopment Commission? Is it, you know, tax dollars? Is it having a bake sale? I don't know. You know, so what is it going to be? And then you can start talking about how we keep it maintained. What kind of ordinances? It doesn't necessarily have to be a zoning ordinance. It could just be like a loose dog ordinance or a public nuisance ordinance. You just pass an ordinance that says, if it's your business, then you keep it fixed up or whatever.
Is that the same thing as Joe or something different? Are you sort of, this idea should happen?
No, I'm saying that I don't think that you can do it that way. I think it would be quicker to just, since you have for Broadway alone. We just focus on Broadway. There's a bigger problem with Main Street as well that Fritz has identified. So, but the Broadway, once you get them in place, you know, you got to do that permit through NDOT because it's their road. So I would jump right into whatever they require, submit that and get into that conversation with them, what they're going to allow, what they're not going to allow. And then you can decide, okay, how much is this going to cost us for us to do what we want to do and NDOT to allow us to do it? Now, then separately, you can already start on Main Street and figure, how are we going to maintain these? Are we going to hire a guy and he's going to do the thing and it's going to be fixed up. And by April 1st, it's going to be flowers and green and it's awesome.
How much can we get? Which can we get from the RDC on, since it's in the TIFT area, on rewriting a comp plan or anything like that?
I mean, that would be a conversation with your attorney and the RDC.
So let me, my thing on, the RDC can fund the comprehensive plan, but it's been a while since I had looked at the Broadway TIF district master plan and the Main Street TIF district master plan. It's all online. It's 172 pages and there are probably 30 or 40 or more talking about trees and urban character and signs and individual properties and a lot of the things that we're talking about. I mean, there are specifics that was put together. Now, I don't know, maybe you've read through that you don't like these.
To revisit.
I mean, there's very specific. I don't know, maybe it's changed that.
Approach that you could take is professional advice would be to have a laser focus on the problem, the perceived problem, and then how do we want to address it? And it sounds like in this case, what I would advise on is reviewing the Broadway plan specifically and see what about that plan you in your opinion you think you want to fix, and then we can figure out if we do, then how much it would cost. Do we want to rewrite the whole thing or just do an appendix or two to it? So is this in the plan? There's a lot of guidance in there about landscaping and things like that. But there could probably be, number one, some specific tasks that we'd like to complete by X year. This is what we want to get accomplished. And then, secondly, the other big part that I think is worth looking at is the vision component that you talked about, because in that Broadway master plan, the idea was to create more of a Main Street feel with having buildings coming right up to the edge of the right of way. But the direction that you're mentioning, which is very interesting, is doing a little bit more of a Route 66 or 1960s era, keeping that vibe in that corridor, since that's how it was originally developed. That was not in the plan, to my knowledge. So I think we're dealing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're dealing with two issues. One is beautification, landscaping. The second one is kind of the vision for the built environment of Broadway. Do we really want to have all the buildings come to the edge, or do we want to kind of mix the two of a 1960s vibe with more urban development? So commend Fritz. Did you want to look at the plan and literally mark it up, or come up with a set of comments of
Myself, what I want to do is have a group of business people, like the next Thursday, we'll meet with the other 30 business owners here in town. We meet once a month, and I was gonna bring this up during that meeting. I know there's some Tammy's here, and there's some other business owners that are interested in looking at the comp plan and what we can do to address these issues.
So as an action item, do you want to do that then? Talk to the other business owners and what issues you see in specifically the Broadway master plan. And then once we get that whole set of issues from this committee that you're working on, then we can figure out what the scope is and let the whole council weigh in on the scope, whether it's a full rewrite or a.
I think it's a good idea to look at what's on there now.
Thank
And then if you've got something that you're wanting to change, you mark it before you put it in front of other business owners. So they can have something, a direction, or you're just gonna you're gonna get nothing out of that.
Yeah, I would agree with all of what Adam said.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of layers of potential things we can do. There's lots of options on the table. If you've got stuff, enhance the stuff, because remember, the plans are the basis for the ordinances. If you've got basis already, you don't have to update yet. You can start doing stuff now.
If you Google Route 66 comp plans, there's hundreds of them, and how they're trying to preserve Route 66. And we have opportunity here not to look like going to, like I said, you go to Florida and it's like, okay, I'm downtown Fishers. Everything is done the same. And I would like to somehow encourage the business owners to, especially all our buildings are block buildings. There's some unique and really interesting things you can do with those, with different paints and designs. But there again, I'd like to start having a committee so we can start talking about what Fortville will look like, because it's almost like I want to be a destination, not like we're going to go here. Well, why not come here and check out Libby's and my places? Both of them, those gas stations were built in the 1950s, and what you possibly can do. And we got a few other buildings that we can do the same thing. I think the RDC, I don't know how much they can help with, I know we already have 50% facade, but maybe we could do some more.
And lastly, what I would say is that having dealt with comprehensive plans, both here in Indiana and when I've worked in other states, is there are two components of them that are very useful that can help the plan not just stay on the shelf. Number one is the goals and objectives, which we had been updating on a yearly basis. I think frankly with COVID, we kind of we got away from doing that, but we should be doing that. And now's a good time to maybe set some new goals. So number one is the goals, and when do these things need to get accomplished by? And then secondly is that map. Those are the two most important parts of any comprehensive plan, I believe.
Would agree with that. One last nugget to throw out there for you. State enabling legislation does have in the books, and Alex can correct me and provide guidance, allows a community to create a preservation commission. Preservation commissions specifically identify resources in your community. That commission presents that to you and you adopt it, a preservation ordinance that says this sign, that sign, this building, that building, we want to pay extra special attention to because we feel that it's really unique to our community. We want to save it. Exactly what you're talking about. And a lot of communities across America have them. Pendleton has one of these and has for decades. So you can go see what Pendleton's doing if you want to know anybody over there. And Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot. You probably are familiar with what I'm talking about. You could create one of those. Basically, it's similar to a plan commission, and I'm assuming Adam knows about preservation commissions. And basically, there's an extra layer. So if somebody wanted to change something, on one of these listed items that you've adopted to be on this list, it would, if it goes before the plan commission, before he can review it, it goes to the preservation commission to get their blessing on whatever needs to happen, and then it goes back to the plan commission. It's an extra layer of review. So with your signs you talked about, definitely do that. So some places like Bloomington, you've heard the horror stories. You can't have this shade of pink or that shade of whatever, or this type of shutter or whatever. You don't have to do it to that degree. You do it to the degree that you feel that you want your community to do it to. So I'm sure that Alex would be happy to provide an ordinance for you to get that adopted and get that ball rolling if you so choose. But that would be one method in addition to your bag of tricks that we're talking about today to move forward with some of these things. So if you have any questions, then I'm going to sit down and let you guys have your meeting.
Thanks.
You
Appreciate it.
Well, I had just a couple of thoughts or questions for you, Fritz, because it sounds like that, we've talked about updating the comprehensive plan versus maybe making a separate document. Alex pointed out that the comprehensive plan already talks about trees and beautification topics. You mentioned that a consultant, could be hired for a certain sum of money who could maybe deal with all these things. And then also you brought up about gathering property owners and business owners, maybe upfront informally, just to gather input and gain some consensus. So I'm just trying to put together all the things we just talked about.
Right,
Because
but I'll do this at our meeting coming up. We'll talk about that. We meet once a month on that moon drop, and we'll talk about it, and we'll come up with things.
Because what you're proposing about talking with business owners, I mean, that's a cost-free thing. You just want to go get some inputs.
Right now.
Okay, all right. Well, just wanted to clarify, we're
No.
not asking to touch up a big bill right now or
No,
something,
no,
yeah.
no. All right, well, thank you.
Okay. Moving on, council to consider purchase of rifle ballistic armor for the Fortville Police Department. Patrick?
Yes. So I've got quotes on ballistic armor. I spoke with Beth Marsh, our accountant, on getting everyone a rifle rated plate front and rear for their soft body armor. So the ones I looked at are the ICWs in conjunction with the soft body armor, which will give them the most protection from the majority of the commonly used rifle rounds, including the ones that killed some officers here in Indiana a couple years ago. So I know their departments bought ballistic glass for all their squad cars, and that's just not an option for Fortville. That's very, very expensive. But I knew I needed to find something that we would have a little extra protection. So I reached out to our vest provider, and this is what they came back with the quote for $16,357.60. That provides every officer front and rear rifle protection and pistol protection. for the most commonly used weapons by criminals. Is a nice way to put that. So I'm looking for a motion this evening, unless somebody's got questions, to approve that and spend that to get the armor for all the officers.
I believe I saw your email that it was already in the budget.
Yes.
Beth built it in. I told her that was kind of a want, not a need, and she felt like it was more of a need than a want. She's like, these are you guys' lives, but I'm
Yeah.
like, well, we've never had them, so for me, it's more of a want. I've never had one as long as I've been a cop. So she built it into the budget this year with that in mind for our vests.
Yeah, I think you need them. Today, the way things are, I think you need them.
And these are a 10-year warranty. Most vests are 5 years. Soft body armor, usually 5 years, and a lot of hard armor is a 5-year. These are a 10-year plate, and they're just common. There's two different common sizes, the 10 by 12 and then the 8 by 10 for the smaller framed officers. And they can be transferred between officer and officer. And our vests currently are already built to fit those, and they just slide in the front and the rear. They're about a half pound a piece, and they're, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, somewhere in there. So it's not going to really impede their movement or anything like that, or add a lot of extra weight to them. It is going to give them a lot more protection in the long run.
And the vests are compatible with these plates?
Yes, every vest we have, which I think currently we got 7 new vests last year. They expire every 5 years, and they're still good, but the Kevlar companies that make them say that, hey, we're only going to warranty them for 5 years. So we are currently running 3 different styles of vests. Some have a side zip, some have a front zip, and then others have a different style of front zip vest, but they will fit in all 3 different styles. And the vests we're currently ordering for new officers will fit those styles also.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of rifle ballistic armor for the Fortville Police Department for $16,357.60.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Okay, old business. Council to consider second reading of ordinance 2024-12C, a rezone of 411 South Merrill Street from residential 3.5 to commercial community. Adam?
I'll quickly go through this item since I'm somewhat familiar with it.
We did get a favorable recommendation from the planning commission as well.
We did.
5-0. No, 5-0,
Okay,
2 abstain.
so this is for the rezone at 411 South Merrill from residential 3.5 to commercial community. And if you recall, this particular lot was being used as a single family residential rental home. And rather than demolishing the home for parking as originally intended by the applicant, Harmony Dentistry, they're receptive to the planning department's request to keep the 1930s era home. They plan on rehabilitating it and converting it into an office as a rental. This rezone, ordinance 2024-12C as written, received a positive recommendation 5-0 from the Planning Commission at the meeting. Just some background for their entire project: the former Grace Baptist Church building, that'd be converted into the actual dental office. That Fortville Business Center, that's attached to the building would remain. And then 401 South Merrill, which is already zone CC, would be converted to an office. So if you recall, here's a bird's eye image of the entire project, and specifically the rezone that you're asked to consider is for this property right here. If we take a look at the zoning map, you can see it's just this spot of yellow. Here were some photos of the house, and then this is just north of the house. This is what the old Grace Baptist Church would look like after renovation. And then here is the concept site and landscape plan. Again, here's 411. That would be converted into an office. And then parking that would be put in. So what I wanted to get into quickly is the evaluation criteria that you, the legislative body, are asked under Indiana code to consider. Same information that the Plan Commission considered. So the first one, is this rezone consistent with the comp plan? No, the 10-year comprehensive plan map that we just talked about, the one that was recently updated, shows this property as residential, neo-traditional, or traditional. But the comprehensive plan text also states as a goal to preserve and enhance the character of Fortville's neighborhoods, enable sensitive, economically feasible maintenance and adaptive reuse of historic buildings, and respect neighborhood form and patterns. I would say from a staff perspective that ideally the structure would remain as a remodeled single-family residential home. However, given that the home backs up to a commercial building and would have a commercial use parking to the north, converting the home into an office is more reasonable than demolishing it for parking. And additionally, the Harmony Dentistry / Fortville Business Center needs parking. There could be up to 20 employees in the dentist office alone. So you can see that comprehensive plan map. The gold color is that residential, traditional, neo-traditional. Second one is the rezone consistent with the current structure, current conditions and character of current structures? No. However, for the reasons stated previously, an adaptive reuse of the home would be preferable to demolition, and the future use of the building as commercial would align with the commercial zoning. Third one is it consistent with the most desirable use of the land? Yes. I'd say yes for the reasons stated previously. Conversion of the structure to commercial is more desirable than demolition. Fourth one is it consistent with conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction? I'd say yes. A well-planned project with a high degree of aesthetic enhancements will maximize property values. And then lastly, is it consistent with responsible growth and development? I'd say yes, really for the same response as with number 4. So it should be noted that the language in section 3 of the rezone ordinance specifically requires that the home not be demolished and that the planning director change the comprehensive plan map designation to multifamily and or commercial, small town urban for the property if the rezone's adopted. Just as a refresher of your comments as a council, when this went for first reading back on December 16th, the majority of council appeared to be supportive of the request. The couple of comments that we noted was Councilwoman Wyatt removed the fence at 401 South Merrill, and they will comply with that. And then secondly, Councilman Fence asked fencing, if used along Merrill, must be decorative. They're not proposing any fencing. In terms of the parking, the amount provided, they're providing 44 spaces on site, plus 5 on Maple, 6 on Merrill. And based on this use, on the calculations in the zoning ordinance, they would have to have a minimum of 34 spaces and a maximum of 93. And that'd be an average of about 63. So they are providing a good amount of parking. In terms of the community response, there were 2 remonstrators at the Plan Commission meeting. Their concerns were to keep the property residential. They were concerned about the impact on the neighborhood character, and they were concerned about traffic. So in addition to the positive recommendation on this rezone, just for your background, the Plan Commission approved the concept site plan for the entire Harmony Dentistry project, including this property. And they required removal of the monument sign on Broadway because of site visibility problems. They required to provide a sidewalk access from Merrill. They need to provide sidewalk ADA access from Broadway and then provide site lighting. So that's the rundown. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address those. And then the applicants are here as well. Thank you.
Questions
Do we know what kind of business is going in there?
in where?
Ultimately
Oh,
into
I don't think they have a
the
tenant.
Yeah, I
You don't have a tenant yet, do you?
I defer to the applicant.
Come on, yeah, you just don't for 411. Come on up. Say who you are.
I'm David Bach. I'm one of the owners of the property on this rezone. So 401, the tenant from the second floor of the business center would be moving to 401. 411, we currently don't have anyone that is signed for it.
Any other questions for him?
So I mean, it could be anything, right? I mean, if it's commercial, it could be anything that.
Well, as long as it's in within the zoning. Right, Adam? Yeah, as long as
So-
it's within the zoning.
Does that zoning allow?
Well, you'd have to read it.
Yeah, it allows,
I don't know.
sure, generally speaking, the commercial center, hold on, I just need
There's
to.
some other things like a meat packing, it can't be stuff like that. It's
Yeah,
a business.
anything that would be allowed in commercial center, and those are things generally like retail and office. And so, the fact that the ordinance requires them to keep the building will also have a limit on what could go there. So for instance, because they have to keep the building there, they wouldn't be putting in a gas station or things of that nature, so.
But what kinds of, but Adam, you were just saying that there's a list of types of businesses that it can't be. I mean, just for edification, like what kinds of businesses are those?
It's retail and office.
So it can only be retail and office.
Yeah, I mean, there is an entire list in the zoning ordinance of what's allowed in CC, but to summarize.
Discussion, because if we're approving for it to become commercial, and if there's certain types of businesses that can and can't go there, that house is a few houses into a very solid residential area, even though the rest of the block going in the other direction is going to be developed as commercial.
As part of the ordinance, if you so choose to restrict out different uses that you may not be comfortable with. So again, we could certainly provide those, but not knowing that this was the first that I've heard of this issue. So the issue that you raised. So
Don't like the idea of commercial businesses in the middle of a residential area.
yes, that's true. But in terms of tailoring it to specific uses, we can certainly, like I said, those can we even put it in the ordinance. If there's certain commercial uses that you don't want to see, those can be added.
So already a list, though, that is something that is readily available, that we should talk about that. But you're saying that
Right.
it's a long list of
It is.
businesses that should not be able to go there?
It's a very, it's all in the zoning ordinance in terms of all the different uses that are allowed or not allowed on that property. So,
Should I look? I think that's
Sure.
information. I
Sure.
thought that would be something that we would be able to talk about, because if there are exceptions,
right.
then can we hear what they are?
Yeah, what I would say is if it's your choice to bump it to the next meeting where we can get that information, certainly we could do that. That's an option you have on the table.
Are there any neighbors that have brought any concern to you?
Just the two at the public meeting. And
The one right across the alley is
we
Waymeyer.
did do our best to address concerns. Since we do have a civil engineer involved We are converting that alleyway to two-way traffic, and it's one-way in off of Maple, so you wouldn't have that site issue on the way out. Actually makes that area a little bit safer.
I mean, Fortville's a residential town. We all live near offices and things like that. I mean, it's kind of the beauty of it. And it fits, I feel like, because it's right there next to all the other retail. I don't have an issue.
I don't have an issue with it either.
Yeah, I would just prefer to know what are those exceptions, because if we just go on the assumption that it's gonna be an office or a retail, and then it turns out to be something that's not office or retail that doesn't happen to be on that exceptions list. I don't know, that's something I would.
Well,
prefer to know.
even then, if it's not on the list, they have to get a variance. They'd have to go in front of people to discuss what goes there if it doesn't fall within that list. But I read it a long time ago because it pictured what I could put there in my business. And it's a list. I mean, you could look, but I can't remember where it's at. Is it in zoning or was it in the comp?
Wouldn't choose a place like that to put it there to begin
I
with.
would say it's about 900 square feet.
It's very small.
Inside, so you're very limited.
I think the same people that could go into that office can go into the office that's right behind it,
Correct.
which is also next to homes. So I mean, I
Right.
don't see a difference between that house and the offices right behind it.
That was already an
Yeah.
office building.
Right, but I'm saying the same people can go into that, they can go into this, so. I mean,
Well, it's small,
Was a home,
Yeah.
so- And it's gonna be,
but it's been in commercial for a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it, so I'll make a motion to approve the second read of ordinance 2024-12C, the rezone of 411 South Merrill Street from residential 3.5 to commercial community.
All in favor? Opposed?
Nay. I just want to make a quick note about it, Mr. Bach. I wish you well with your business and I enjoyed talking with you. I just am not comfortable proceeding without knowing what kind of business is going in there. I'm concerned about erosion of residential properties to hardcore commercial properties to potentially getting knocked down years from now to become totally a parking lot kind of thing, things that we can't really foresee right now. And I also shoveled out the snow from your entire Broadway frontage, by the way, so.
So.
So
we-
going to the
we
next
actually-
topic.
We actually did shovel it. Was that you that I saw?
Yeah,
I honestly did not recognize you.
it
So
was bundled.
we did plow the front, and then when Broadway got plowed, it covered the sidewalks again.
Yeah,
So during the second storm, we did have the whole property plowed again.
yeah, no, and that's fine. I just wanted to mention, like, I feel a lot of goodwill, but I'm just uncomfortable with that particular zoning topic, but it, doesn't matter. You got it anyway, but I just wanted to say, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All of the zoning districts are online under the planning documents. Article 3, section 3.2 has the use matrix. You can go through CC and see everything that is a permitted use with a P would be allowed. There are a lot of.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Okay. Next up, we have the discussion about the infamous sidewalk snow removal responsibility for
Why-
Broadway.
Why infamous?
It's become infamous, obviously.
That's an
So-
interesting statement.
Joe, do you wanna start off with this and?
I can, I mean, I think Vanessa was wanting to, have some comments and, I mean, I had it on the agenda because it was something I wanted to address this evening. But it sounds like, she's got some angles that she wants to bring up and address as well, so.
I to lead a discussion about this because right now we have new sidewalks on Broadway. And so we just had the first big snows over the past few weeks since those sidewalks were put in. And we're not doing anything about it right now. But for the town of Fortville currently plows the snow from the sidewalks on Main Street. And so there was some discussion that developed on Facebook about, why is the town plowing the sidewalks of Main Street, but not these new sidewalks on Broadway? It seems like it would be consistent to handle them the same way. And so then there was some further counter conversation about, it would cost more money, or maybe it would be more difficult, or maybe there are these other considerations. And so You know, and at our last town meeting on December 16th, I had brought up what's the plan for this? Because we can't just leave it, which so far we've just kind of left it. And I shoveled some of the sidewalk just because I thought it would be nice to do, and it's actually good exercise. I noticed that some town plows actually went through and plowed, I think, the north side of Broadway after like the first storm. And I think that action of plowing the north side of Broadway gets partially toward what we're trying to get to, which is just, can we just plow Broadway the same way we plow the sidewalks on Main Street? And so I did some research about it, and I conferred with Alex a little bit about this by email, because right now I don't believe, moving on toward the question of should the town of Fortville take care of this, or should we just assume or assign the responsibility of clearing the snow to the property owners? I did a little bit of research, and I don't believe, like Alex, jump in at any point if I've got any of this wrong, but I don't believe that there is any state level law assigning responsibility either to property owners or to the municipality for clearing snow from sidewalks. And we also do not have an ordinance in Fortville assigning responsibility in either direction to the property owners or to the town of Fortville for sidewalks. We do give out notices that say, you know, we've got notices we put up on Facebook and on the town website that say, when you're shoveling, don't put the snow back in the road, you know, great. But we don't actually have an ordinance that assigns this responsibility to the property owners. Indianapolis has an ordinance establishing this, and they also, part of their ordinance is to give fines if you don't clear your own sidewalk. But I read and I posted an interesting article from IndyStar that says that Indianapolis has not given barely any fines in the 50 years or so, the 45 years that they've had this ordinance, because the judges wind up dismissing the fines. And then when push comes to shove, so to speak, and when people inevitably slip and fall on icy sidewalks that haven't been cleared, in the case of Dennison Parking Inc. versus Davis, when the injured party who fell tries to go sue the person who owns the house next to the sidewalk or the property next to the sidewalk, in that specific case, the court actually found that Indianapolis was at fault, which wasn't even part of the original complaint. They were just complaining against the person who owned the house. So it seems to me, from the research that I've done, that even in the case of Indianapolis, that made an ordinance to say, hey, you know, in this city, it's the property owner's responsibility. They can't enforce it because they don't even bother writing fines. That's what the Indianapolis Code Enforcement Department said. And then when there are lawsuits, because there is a safety hazard associated with snow and ice covered sidewalks, when lawsuits do come, in some cases, the municipality winds up being found at fault anyway, even though they have an ordinance, you know, the court finds the city to be at fault anyway. So, I mean, I've read all of this. And then you also look at in Fortville, we're already plowing the Main Street sidewalks. Why aren't we doing Broadway? Aren't they both part of the downtown, you know, business district? So, you know, those are kind of the, you know, looking at it in either direction. We have a handful of options here, which are like, do nothing like we've been doing and don't particularly enforce anything. And what's happening right now is the sidewalks are not consistently cleared. So you still have your safety hazard. There's no walkability along the sidewalks for basically the rest of the winter. So these brand new sidewalks that we just got after 2 years of construction woes are unusable for months and months of each year. So we could do that. We could do nothing. We can, you know, do nothing, assume that it's the responsibility of the property owner, but don't enforce it. And you're just going to have snow covered, unusable sidewalks. We could make an ordinance to say, you know, formally assign the responsibility to property owners, and maybe we could even do fines or something, kind of like with noise, like the noise ordinances. But from what I've seen, other cities and towns around Indiana have trouble enforcing that anyway, and then you wind up being at fault in court anyway. So that is also an option. Or another option is to look into Fortville arranging to plow the Broadway sidewalks the same way and with the same standards that it plows the Main Street sidewalks. And then the question becomes, do we have the resources to do this? Is it gonna cost more money? You know, and really look into it and figure that out. So that's just a little bit of background. And I wrote a couple of extensive Facebook posts to that effect, you know, kind of examining these different details. So you know, with that, I'd be happy to discuss it. I personally am curious to know if we're already plowing the sidewalks on Main Street, can we just use the same resources, the same machines and the same people to plow Broadway? Or if not, why not?
Well, if I can jump in here,
Please.
we do Main Street because the council directed us to do Main Street sidewalks years ago. So we've taken on that task and we take care of that as not a priority. We have the priority list that we do, the main arteries, the main thoroughfares through town. As soon as we get done with, those main arteries, then we go on to the secondary streets. After that, then we move on to alleys, dead ends, parking lots, cul-de-sacs. And then we'll, you know, try to get I know Heath has been really good as far as the Parks Department. They've been working with us on the Main Street and kind of helping take care of that to get a jump on that. But before they came in, Main Street wasn't touched till all the rest of the roads and everything was opened up and done.
But people are really liking it, the way the Main Street sidewalks get
Right.
plowed. It's a big hit. People
So-
like it, the business owners and people walking around.
So like I said, I actually had this on the agenda anyway this evening, because what I want to do is ask the council to designate Main Street and the north side of Broadway as a primary pedestrian route and have us clean the snow off of that area. The south side is a little narrower. The machine we've got's about 5.5 feet wide. It might fit down to there in places, but where there's curbs, there's lamp posts or something encroaching onto the walk, that throws a machine out in the middle of the road, out on the highway, drops off the curb. So it's not very practical. The north side is considered a trail. South side is a sidewalk. We don't typically do sidewalks. The trail on the north side, I believe, is 12 to 13 feet wide. So it's easy enough for us to make a good accessible path that'll make a pedestrian access from the east to the west of the Old Town area. And then also, obviously, the crosswalks. We'll want to make sure we do those. But one thing too I wanted to note is this is still under NDOT's responsibility and milestone. It has not been turned over to the town of Fortville yet. So it's still their responsibility to address it.
To plow the snow
Well,
on the roads.
when I talked to NDOT, they said it is still Milestone's project and they're responsible for everything. They went digging through their documents and they thought there was snow removal in there, but they weren't able to find it. But it is still an NDOT project or a Milestone project until it's been turned over to the town of Fortville.
No, they're not doing it. So I mean, the most that we could do is track them down and make them do it or to extract money out of them for it, right?
It's too on the sidewalks that you were talking about. I mean, other sidewalks throughout town. I mean, I've had some conversations and some meetings with other town managers and nobody does it. In fact, I was surprised that there were a few that have, say the property owner has to have the snow within 72 hours of the snowstorm ending. Also, like you said, what I've heard from each one is they don't enforce it. So it's not enforced. And just like I had mentioned in the last meeting when we talked about, they just consider it closed until the snow melts or the everything is clean up.
That's why we can talk to about this back in August when I wrote you guys an email. They let the business owners what the expectations were gonna be. And your expectations were what we did before we had sidewalks. Well, that's not what we have now. What we have now, we have sidewalks, so we have to make decisions of let business owners know what to expect. So we can work around what you're gonna do and what we're gonna do.
And so, I mean, what Joe was saying, it sounds like Joe's proposal here is to effectively add the north side of Broadway to the Main Street sidewalk plowing plan, which is good. I mean, I still would have some questions about the south side of Broadway because there are, you know, people still, you still need to be able to walk along there to get to places there. So if the machine, you know, I guess my question would be if the machine is 5.5 feet wide, and the south side, just on a practical level, the south side of the sidewalk is, you're saying that in some areas might be less than 5.5 feet wide. And the
The
machine might
sidewalk
stick out.
itself is not 5 feet. No. There's something, you know, encroaching on the road. You end up with a machine down there that's kind of stuck.
The machine would be hanging off.
It can't
into
go
the-
around.
So, but whereas the main street sidewalks are much wider.
And two, if I could, the comparison between the Main Street sidewalks. And sidewalks for the downtown businesses for them to be able to still get business and function. Most of your businesses along Broadway have a parking lot, so most people, you know, if the sidewalks aren't accessible and yeah, if it's a beautiful day, you want to get out and walk and go down to the store, it'd be awesome, but you know, if it's cold, snow's covering, slick, you can always take it and get in the car and go down on the parking lot and go in.
I have kind of a radical, crazy idea, but remember when there was a lady who came up here to make a public comment and she said, why don't we have any sort of like, internships for kids kind of, you know, jobs, like stuff kids can do to work with the Parks Department or the Street Department or whatever. And I think she was talking about planting things or gardening or I don't know, something like that. Is there an opportunity to maybe establish some kind of little project like that where kids can come with their shovels, kind of like I, an adult, came with my shovel? Just shovel
I
it.
don't know if we want to do that along Broadway.
I don't want to put kids out on Broadway.
Well, I didn't, small little baby children. I meant, you know, like, you know, like younger adults. But
Touch on you know, some of the experience that Heath has had too with volunteers. They're all anxious to go and they're on the list and they'll show up and it's too much and they disappear. And then you're standing there and there's nobody to do it.
paid work, some kind of, just in the spirit of what that lady said. She was saying, you know, there are kids internships who want some kind of job. Isn't there some kind of job that they could do here? And I mean, to me, that seems, you know, again, not for like tiny elementary school children, but
Yeah.
you know, for like older teenagers or college age kids or something like that. I don't know.
I would be a little nervous about putting them on the Broadway. I mean, if it was on Main Street or something maybe, but Broadway with traffic being a little faster.
I have a teenager, she wouldn't be.
How wide is that? Can I ask you a question? How wide's that plow? You said 5.5 feet.
Yeah. well,
Can the RDC buy equipment?
What about a regular residential style snowplow, you know, like the kind that's like 1.5 feet wide?
We blow it in.
Heath Luther, Parks Manager, for the record, just wanted to touch on a couple things. One, from a payment standpoint, I mean, we can't get part-time people now. We don't have it in the budget to be able to even front any kind of internship money or anything like that. But just speaking as far as equipment is concerned, I just want to make sure everybody is aware, all of Main Street sidewalks, part of the real tight parking lots, and now the north side of Main Street is done by one piece of equipment. And I just want to make it aware to everybody that that piece of equipment now has to be completely rebuilt after this storm. It's going to be about $1,600 to have it completely rebuilt. The gears on it are bad. Even though those sidewalks are new, there are still things, for instance, the grates that the trees are in. As you use that machine, and it's just over time, it just has to be redone. We don't have, outside of that piece of equipment, we don't have another piece of equipment. I know we've talked at one point in time, we'll see what happens eventually with trying to take care of the trails all the way out to Mount Vernon. We will have to have a serious discussion from a manpower standpoint and an equipment standpoint to make those kind of things happen, right?
Yeah.
Our current issue with that piece of equipment, actually just sent the guys down today. I was going to touch on this in my brief report, but Mid-State Truck Equipment has another snow blower on consignment, like new, for $1,600. The parts that we're going to need are about $1,400. So it may be worth looking at us getting a second snow blower for the front of that attachment in case something happens to the one that we have that we can swap back and forth. Because if that goes down, none of the sidewalks are getting done. I'll just make that very clear from that standpoint.
Your town uses a brush on theirs.
This has
They
a
got
brush
a
on.
brush that
And that brushes work great if it's just a dusting, that type of
Yeah.
thing, but a brush isn't gonna do anything for the amount of snow that we've gotten, and then obviously the ice and augers for that.
Smaller snow blower, like, the residential style ones that are like, this big or something, something like that for the south side of Broadway, and then as a backup machine for the other stuff.
It wouldn't be ADA accessible.
Wouldn't be ADA accessible, and again, I mean, this is a conversation
not
for you
anyway.
guys to have as far as manpower and the cost that we want to spend as a town to do that kind of stuff. And again, it's taxpayer money. You guys decide what to do with it. But if you're walking a snow blower, it would take hours. I can tell you right now, just personally speaking, Joe had asked for some snow hours just from essentially that day prior to that snow hitting until now. We're about 133 hours in for just my 3 people.
Right. What was, how long did it take you guys to plow the north side? Was it an hour for them to run it along there? Or was it 2 hours? Was it an 8-hour shift?
I mean, it was a labor of love. We had to have the street department come over and take out, because again, the issue that you fight over there on the north side is you have private businesses that
Parking
are
lot,
plowing
yeah.
their own parking lots that are shoving the snow. I mean, we had mounds of snow that we had to get through like that just to even get the sidewalk clear at that point in time. So a tractor had to get involved. We were down on Main Street taking dump truck loads of, Bobcats and Tractor Supplies to try and haul a bunch of the snow off. If you go behind the water plant right now, I think we ended up dropping something like 25 loads of snow behind the water plant. So it's a lot of man hours. It's a lot of work. If you're asking to do the south side walking, I mean, it's going to take one person hours.
I know, I did mine.
Yeah, and I did street to me, we also did theirs, and so, I guess our question is, how many people did it take and how long did it take to do what you're describing?
Jesus.
We started, let's just put it this way. We came into work at 4:00 on Sunday. We left at 4:00 on Monday, 24 hours straight in a truck or in a machine, just to stay on top of what we had. Tuesday was a full 8 hours of cleanup. That wasn't even including the north side at that point in time. The other snow hit on that following Monday or that Friday. Joe had asked us to go out, I think it was maybe Wednesday, and clean up that north side, probably 5 hours. I mean, I'm not including the street department.
No, but how long did but I think the question is, how long did the north side of Broadway take?
I mean, it was a solid full day's worth of work.
Just the north side of
Yes.
sidewalk?
Yes.
Side of the
The
sidewalk.
Outside of running the street, if you're asking to have it done like Main Street is done, it is going to take hours. It took them a solid 5 to 7 hours between getting down there, salting it. They ran salt down there. It takes them at least an hour to salt the whole thing. We've gone through, let's put it this way, from an equipment standpoint. And again, I'm not speaking as far as the street department's concerned. Every year for the last, let's call it 5 years, we've gone through about a pallet of salt in the Parks Department. That's to cover Main Street sidewalks, community service parking lot, shelter house, that type of thing. I've gone through 3 pallets of salt already this year. So that in and of itself, I mean, it takes a solid 45 minutes to an hour for 2 people just to salt Main Street sidewalks prepping. North side, you add the north side on top of that. The length of that, you're probably talking another hour and a half. This is all speculative because we're just now talking about starting to do it. So we've only done it a few times at this point, but it's taken a solid 2 hours for 2 guys to go down there and just salt. You start adding snowblower on top of that from edge to edge. You start getting into some issues. So, and again, the issue with you don't have on Main Street, the issue that you have on the north side in particular, maybe even the south side as well. They had mentioned about the state coming through plowing, right? State comes through, plows, you get it done. Next thing you know, state runs through and it's got to be hit again. And with public parking lots or private parking lots over there, pushing snow into the walkways, it takes a while.
All right. Well, that's why I'd like to talk about this, get a plan together for next year. And, what's that plan look like? If you need a piece of equipment,
Let's look at
we
it.
might be able to get it from the RDC because it's in the TIF. So this is an Alex question. Is that possible?
It's possible, but I don't want, we need to look at it. I don't want to
Okay.
just say you've got an open checkbook.
Right. Solution.
This is a conversation as well with Joe and the street department.
Side conversations. we have side conversations, please?
They can talk if they want to talk. Go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead,
requesting,
Eve.
I'm requesting not.
The conversation with the isn't just about the Parks Department. I don't really want to get into the history of this, but very quickly, when I started back in 2017, we had one employee for the Parks Department. That was myself. Okay.
See this, everybody? Go on.
So we had one employee in the Parks Department. It was myself. Okay. I had, me personally, took care in the event of snow. I had one truck, one plow. I ran kind of the parks. Okay. And then at the end of my runs, usually a gentleman who's now long since retired for the street department, an older guy would come in, Denny would come in and start doing the Main Street sidewalks. After I got doing what I did, I would go help him. We'll transition to now. Obviously, the street department's lost some people here and there. They've needed some help. We as a Parks Department are trying to help. We're only up one truck, right? We had one then, we've got two now. And then we've got our snow blower. And so what the Parks Department has done, the street department handles all the streets. We have done every parking lot in town, public parking lot. So in total, I believe I counted 11 parking lots the Parks Department was trying to do, as well as all the sidewalks on Main Street. And then if we go into the north side, that's a lot for three people. Having that equipment, to your point, Fritz, like, yes, and Joe and I have talked about that. We've had conversations about what it would take from an equipment standpoint to be able to help make this a little bit smoother. We just don't have it right now.
But I think that's what we're getting to, right? We can appreciate the description you've given of the work that it takes, but you mentioned that there's a little bit of a single point of failure with your one piece of equipment. We don't have the right equipment, it sounds like, to do the south side of Broadway. There is maybe a smaller machine that might be able to make some kind of a path. As Tanya said, maybe it wouldn't be ADA compliant, but it's not anyway right now. Right now, there's just a great big safety hazard out there. So, so I think the question is like, what machinery, could you recommend something?
And I guess the question then is, and this is for council and Joe and you guys to work out, is how much task hours you want to spend and, from a manpower standpoint, from an equipment standpoint.
I think the business owners want to just know what to expect and you just have a plan together. If you're going to say you're not going to do south side at all, then that's what we need to know. Okay, they're not going to do south side at all. Yeah.
The question is, what would it take? And can we accommodate that? Or if we can't accommodate it, then we figure out what to do.
I think that would be a question probably for 2025, 26 winter, right? I think at this point in time, as it sits, I think the general consensus is from just talking with Joe in a manpower standpoint. Again, you guys are going to have to decide what you want to do as far as, what's set in stone. You guys, business owners take care of this and that. Is we probably have the ability at this point in time to hit Main Street sidewalks along with all the other stuff, as well as the north side sidewalks. We don't have the equipment or the people in place at the south side. So my suggestion would be to what Joe's proposing is adding the north side sidewalks to it. Anything on the south side at this point in time is just going to have to stay business owners.
And then revisit next year.
That would be
Plan an idea together for next year for the south side.
Yeah, and let's also be very honest about the fact that, yeah, we've had some snows, but
Not like this.
this is the first time we've had a significant snow in 5 years, right? Well, I don't think we plowed for the entire season last year. We didn't have one significant snowfall. So again, how many resources do you want to dedicate to something that may or may not happen? That's up to you guys for discussion and however you guys want to handle it. But I mean, that is.
I think it's just the discussion between the business owners and the town is what's the expectations? That's all we're looking
Well,
for.
it sounds like Heath laid it out. I mean, I think that sounds good. Joe, Joe's plan is add north side of Broadway to Main Street to make those together the kind of downtown plowing plan for now. And then for now, for the rest of this winter, the south side is on the property owners. But in the meantime, before next winter, we should get together, look at options for what we could do for the south side and figure it out. And if there's nothing, then well before winter next year, then we make that clear somehow.
Sure.
Whatever we want it doing.
Yeah, whether it's you guys deciding that it still needs to be the business owners or we find equipment. The other thing, just from a logistical standpoint, obviously, I haven't spent it personally, not spent enough time on the north side sidewalks or the south side sidewalks to know what's there when I'm running a 6-foot auger or 5-foot auger on, the surface. Like, I need to know what's underneath that snow before I actually plow that snow.
Or some of the sidewalks have, like on my side, there's a little ledge that comes
Got the
up,
tall curb, the
and
standing
that-
curb.
get chipped or
Mhm.
it's that.
Yeah, so there's some things we're gonna have to look at as far as that's concerned, but to Joe's point, proposing that, hey, because those sidewalks are wider, I'm still not comfortable yet having guys run edge to edge just because we don't really know what it looks like, but it would be, let's just call it a 6-foot wide path down that 13-foot sidewalk that would give people somewhere to walk. That would be salted when it needed to be. We are at the point now where we're preemptively doing that kind of stuff. Prior to this last snowstorm, we were always, for anybody that's down on Main Street before we're supposed to get weather, there's always salt down on the sidewalks. We're always dropping salt just in case, we got weather coming in. We'll just start doing that on the north side as well. Again, it's more of a cost to us, but in the same token, it's not huge from a salt standpoint. We've gone through more salt this year. But outside of that, I mean, we'll continue to do kind of where that north side meets Main Street, and run down as far as we can. I would ask if there's any business owners in here, or you guys have communication with those business owners, that if they do have private companies plowing their parking lots, to do their best not to push snow up where those sidewalks come out. Because at that, especially as cold as it is right now, you're not getting through it without a backhoe because it's frozen solid. So having that push kind of into the corners a little bit is best. And I know it's tough based on some of the size of some of those parking lots, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up of where we were at from an equipment and manpower standpoint, and just kind of how everything laid out as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion for that? Or-
I think just a consensus would be good.
Do we need to look at changing the ordinance and actually making specific as far as who is responsible?
We do have an ordinance that states that the parkway maintenance is the responsibility of the joining property owner. Unfortunately, where it's written, it says that let's see.
It doesn't mention.
It says to include like the grass and the bushes and the trees, but not limited to. It probably should be cleared up a little bit to be more specific on some of the other stuff.
To be elaborated to include to address sidewalk and then specifically snow, or maybe just a different ordinance, but
Issues with that, or?
No, so I mean, just since this came up again, I mean, to clarify, I've read the Dennison case. City of Indianapolis wasn't found liable for it. The court did say there's a common law duty for municipalities to keep their streets and sidewalks in a reasonably safe condition. And I think we do that. Most of the case law out there, and it's all common law. There's no statute, as Vanessa mentioned, state statute governing this, which then it falls under home rule. So the council can or cannot exercise its authority to have an ordinance. There are a lot out there. Town of St. John has one. If you want to do it, I mean, I think you have to look at, there needs to be a timing component. So once it stops, Indianapolis has this, most of the ordinances that I've looked at have some sort of timing component that, all right, if it stops snowing by X hour, then you've got so much time to remove the snow and vice versa.
that's how the
There can
Indianapolis.
be
one is, right?
a penalty provision. There can be, which is Indianapolis and some others, Town of St. John, and some others have more of kind of the weed or the common area where the town can go out and push the snow and then send you an invoice for the town's costs. So I'm not concerned about any liability of the town as long as we're exercising, reasonable precautions and going out and moving snow and doing what the town can do and everything that he said and that I know that street department guys do, that we're fine there. Does that mean somebody won't sue us? Of course not, but that's why I have insurance. Then the last thing, I mean, it's just people are out there looking at it most of the time. And this may be of interest to the members of the public or all residents. Most of the cases, including just, a couple of years ago that deal with this, it's someone's walking along the sidewalk after snow and they fall in front of someone's house and they sue the property owner, saying that the property owner had a duty to them to clear their sidewalk because the town's ordinance or the city's ordinance said that they were supposed to do that. And Indiana law is clear that a Fortville ordinance or a St. John ordinance or a city of Minneapolis ordinance, unless the ordinance specifically creates a private action against a property owner, it doesn't exist. So those all get thrown out. So if you decide to move forward with an ordinance to put the responsibility for clearing sidewalks in front of a property on the property owner or occupant, that's fine from a town liability and also just from a property owner, unless the council does something that affirmatively creates a duty to pedestrians so that if they fall, then you'd have a duty and breach, and it gets into that tort lawsuit, personal injury lawsuit. That won't exist either. So perfectly fine to consider, perfectly fine to adopt. Fishers, I don't think has an ordinance, but just has a snow removal plan that's kind of similar to what. So lots of ways to get there. And I think as long as the council's comfortable that the town's acting in, reasonable best interest of the community with the little bit of snow that we get now. It's been a big snow year, but we might go another 5 years and not have it.
So
All things to
if we
think about.
actually do this do a designated pedestrian route, let's say we actually specifically say what that route is, and the pedestrian is on a different route other than that, that's not been cleared, then doesn't that take the liability away from the town?
Yeah, they would be hard pressed. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
they can't find a lawyer that's gonna file a lawsuit. But the town's insurance and the town's lawyers should be able to quickly, dismiss that. And yeah, I mean, listen, although we try to take responsibility from human beings and just, allow stupidity to reign supreme, if we've got a plan and there's cleared pedestrian walkway and someone's just choosing not to do that for whatever reason, I mean, they're accepting that risk.
But also, Alex, a quick question on what you just said. If we had an ordinance that said, it's the property owner's responsibility, and if there were penalties, we could just do that and say, hey, look, just for your reference, it's your responsibility.
Yep.
If we do penalties, we would have to be ready to enforce those, right? Or else it would be.
I'm in favor of that. If you have a penalty provision in an ordinance, then we should want to enforce them.
Because I mean, the stuff that I read, like the article that I sent you showed that Indianapolis doesn't enforce their penalties. And I just worry that kind of thing makes the town kind of look not serious.
I
not trustworthy in terms of enforcing its ordinances properly.
I agree. I would say though that Indianapolis it's not even apples and oranges. It's
Yeah,
like apples and
huge
cucumbers. Because it's just, there are so many sidewalks, there's a million people over there. So,
Oh, for sure.
but I think that if Fortville decided to adopt an ordinance and had penalties, it would be much easier to enforce and implement. Same as like weed ordinances and other things that the town does a good job.
Well,
I wouldn't be interested in doing an ordinance at all, because it could be an 80-year-old woman. It's her house. How is she gonna remove snow from her house? So I'm not interested in.
That's kind of my point too, because I don't think, if we're not prepared to enforce penalties, then we probably just shouldn't have an ordinance requiring it if we can't enforce it.
I think that's a reasonable
And-
position to take.
And especially if, maybe we could, for the south side of Broadway, put it off, kind of like revisit it next year to see if we can come up with an equipment plan.
I think South Broadway would be a lot easier, because those are businesses. They should want to have their sidewalk clear. Yeah, come on up.
So, we have no issue clearing our own sidewalk, to be completely honest with you. If you guys do an ordinance, I do suggest that if the state plows over our sidewalk again, that we're not held liable and get fined for that. But other than that, I mean, we're already gonna have someone coming out to plow our lot. The first time we did it this year, we took my 1.5 foot snow blower and Matt and I were here for 4 hours plowing. So we learned that the second snowfall to pay someone to do that with a plow. So really not a problem on our end to,
I think we
At
just
least
gotta
for our
give the
property.
business owners along Broadway. There's probably 4 or 5 that aren't doing anything with their sidewalks, and that's where we need to strengthen it for next year. The business owner should be responsible to remove on the south side.
no, I agree.
They would want to.
Somebody plow your parking lot, they take care of the sidewalk too.
They don't, not mine.
I know, but you have to, yeah, I mean, you
I
have to ask
answer
that.
for that.
Yeah, you have to ask.
But I
Yeah.
lived on a street in Indianapolis that same thing happened to me. And after, I don't know, a bazillion times about there, I'm gonna have a clear sidewalk because I'm a good citizen and I believe that we should shovel our sidewalks. You just don't do it anymore. There's no point. That's why I'm happy if we have the north side done. There is a way to get across. My parking lot is clear. And if somebody wants to walk to my store, walk on the north side, cross the street safely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
and if I could, when we was talking about the sidewalks on Main Street and Broadway, like we are doing now, luckily, like I say, Heath is able to get out there and tackle Main Street. Sometimes we try to strategically time everything, because when Main Street's busy downtown, we just leave it. People have to walk over the snow, they have to figure out how to get in the buildings, but then we come in later in the evening when everybody's gone, then we have, full reign to go and clean it all up. So again, the sidewalks, the last priority, but if we can work them in like a Main Street deal, we try to jump on it. Broadway would be a little bit of a different animal, because we do know that NDOT we're usually done and out of here before NDOT comes through a couple
Takes a while.
times.
Yeah.
So the sidewalks on Broadway would probably not get hit until after Broadway's opened up from curb to curb, and we know they're not gonna throw anything else on it. Then we'll get it cleared off. It could be a day or so later, but.
No, I like Joe's plan, and maybe we can, between now and next winter, figure out, see about equipment. And then see.
And I was listening to Mr. Intermill's case, where he's talking about, but there is Indiana code essentially establishing essentially a roadway within NDOT's jurisdiction goes in through municipalities such as Fortville. Per code, it is the responsibility of the municipality to maintain everything beyond the curb. So at this point, it would come into question, could an ordinance override that duty on behalf of the municipality to essentially be required of that? In the meantime, let's say NDOT has yet to accept final acceptance of the contract with RoadSafe right here. Might be worth just sending a letter right to RoadSafe, putting them on notice, requesting them to clear it off. In the meantime, until final acceptance is there. Usually those contracts, daily include maintaining the sidewalks in reasonably safe condition, unless it's a subcontractor like traffic controls, TCS. You'll see on the back of the signs, you look, you see a sticker, it's usually right there. Both letters are sent it right there or to NDOT, but they're pretty much gonna shoot it right over to the contractor. But I just wanted to raise that here for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say our street guys do a great job. And there's not a lot of towns around that look as good as ours do in a short amount of time that it does. And there's streets in Indianapolis that you still can't get down. So I'm very thankful that our guys take good care of what we have. And that's really the most important thing, so everybody can move.
I agree. And like I said, the Main Street sidewalks are a huge hit. People go on Facebook talking about, both business owners and pedestrians go on there saying, Main Street is so great, we can get down to the restaurants and everything.
Okay. So yeah, I think we all agree, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we all agree with. And I still would like to, I feel like we should name it a pedestrian route. And then that way people will know that the other sidewalks are just simply closed. Don't get on them if they're not clear. This will be clear for pedestrians to use, and that's where you should use it. I feel like that's the best thing to do.
I think,
for liability
that's
reasons.
kind of the, avenue I think a lot of the towns are taking. Cause I've talked to several of the communities and they don't do sidewalks. They don't touch them. In fact, I think it's on, McCordsville's agenda this evening for their town council meeting to include sidewalks and the responsibility of the homeowners. Because, after talking to them, they realized they didn't have one as well. Some of the other communities I talked to found out they don't even plow subdivisions. You know, they do the main thoroughfares and they're done. I want to, give kudos. Again, thank you, Tanya, for saying that, but give kudos to the street and the parks department because they've all, they did a really good job. Very proud of them. I'm down one guy in the street department that's out on medical leave. I'm down another guy. Well, I was during the storm. So there was some learning curves in there with some new folks and, they come along. They did pretty good. There might have been a few little areas we need to go back and touch up, but they did great. Between the parks and the street department, they had about 317 hours in fighting this last week's storm with the first one and the second one to come in after that. We got about 32 miles of streets, and with the parking lots and everything that we got, the guys open up, it's part of our policy is when we go to clean up the road for snow, we go curb to curb. And we want to get it to where, when we're done, then if the property owners want to come and clean out the end of the driveway around their mailbox and stuff, they know we're not going to be back and fill their driveway in again. So we try to do that. Plus, you never know if that snow is going to melt before the next big snowstorm comes in. If you don't get it curb to curb and it's out in the middle of the road and it freezes, next big snow, you can't touch that stuff. It doesn't go anywhere. So again, I think they did a great job.
I do agree, and I'm glad about the north side of Broadway. I still think that we should maintain what we talked about earlier to identify and get an estimate for a piece of equipment to do the south side of Broadway. Because just to make a quick point to everyone, because I went along shoveling these sidewalks myself and, in Libby's example where she was saying, people can walk along the north side and just cross somewhere to get to like Libby's or, to Denver's or whatever. You can't really, there isn't really a safe way to get across because at where Libby's is, even if you cross the street at Merrill, there was no clear sidewalk to walk west from Merrill to Libby's on the south side unless you jaywalk across the street to go directly into the driveway. And if you get hit by a car, then that's at your fault because you're jaywalking. So there actually is not a safe way to get across if the south side isn't also clear for any businesses that aren't on an intersection where there's a light. So. So I think you should still look for a piece of equipment for that.
Still going on about the snow removal and it's getting so sick of hearing about this. But real quick, just to let you know too, we do intend on doing the trails once they are turned over to us, once they're established and once they go somewhere. If it's a dead end road or dead end trail, we're probably not going to get on it. When you go removing snow, a lot of times you do more damage than you do good. This plow digs in, tires break stuff off and so if the trail's out there and it doesn't go anywhere, it's a dead end, we're probably not going to touch it. The trail from Mount Vernon north, from that subdivision down to the school, we did plow that across the bridge and got that opened up so the people in that neighborhood, if they're walking to school, because the school cleaned their trail off. So that, we plan on doing that as well. But again, it's not going to be a high priority. And if it doesn't go anywhere, it probably won't get touched. The guys, when they were plowing snow on the big time, it was, they had been up, the snowstorm come in like midday, late day. Some of them were already up for 10 hours that day. Then they plowed for 24 hours straight. So around on about 34 hours since they had sleep, they were all exhausted. So if it seemed like there was any downtime by the time they went home and rested and, we didn't have a full crew in that next day. So.
They did a great job.
Yeah. Appreciate that. We can move on from the snow if you guys are
Yeah.
good. Okay. Okay. Well, that was part of my discussion. So thank you. Let me give you an update on the water treatment plant. The guys have been doing different things, setting the filters, chlorine, changing the chlorine levels, what's injected, how much is injected. They've been able to knock down a lot of the the iron and stuff that's getting through, it's improved significantly. Dave's still not happy with the quality of water and thinks it needs to be better. And, you know, I agree. If we can get it as good as possible, that's what we want. What we're proposing now is to add a filter aid that will help with some of that iron as it comes through to build up the flock in those filters. It would give the iron and particles something to hold on to so they don't just flush through the filters. Right now, the company that is proposing that is wanting to put in a sample filtering aid, I guess, and see how it works. But I think what they're talking about now is maybe go ahead and make it to where if it does work, it could be modified to be a permanent fix. But it was $5,500 for this. So Dave's kind of working with them to make sure that they are confident that it's going to do something before spending that money. So that's on the water treatment plant. I will tell you during that snowstorm we had 3 water service lines leaking. So the guys needed to try to work on. They did get one of those knocked out. A couple other ones are a little more difficult to get to, but they will be knocking them out in the very near future. Those the other 2 left are small weepers. And just if you haven't frozen, I know some folks have got water that froze up. If this is the coldest night and tomorrow it starts to warm up, don't think, oh, I made it through and I'm not going to have to, worry about frozen pipes or anything. As the temperatures start to come up, it forces that frost down. So we end up having more frozen meters, frozen pipes, busted mains after the cold and things start to warm up. So don't get false hope and say, well, I don't have to keep my cabinet door open anymore or something, and just to protect yourself. Just the water treatment plant, kind of run back. Sorry, Pat, I know you want me to. Back when I first started here, we had probably under 1,000 customers. And we had an issue with the unaccounted for water of a 45 to 50%. It was a challenge to try to find leaks and meters and where the water was going and everything. But over the years with the water main replacement we've done, the new plant, the towers, the metering system that we're utilizing, I'm happy to say now we're close to 3,600 customers, and they're unaccounted for. This last year was down to 5.6%. So we made some good progress on that. What else did I have here? The frosting project, it's been advertised. Let's see. It's been advertised twice, the 15th and the 22nd. Well, actually the 22nd, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we will be opening bids publicly. It'll be here if anybody wants to show up. We'll open those bids, take them under advisement, give Alex an opportunity to look them over and let the engineer look them over. And then we'll have that on the agenda on the February 3rd meeting, hoping that we have good numbers and the council can approve a contract that will take care of pretty much everything north of Hamilton Street, with the exception of Merrill going out that. So that's any curb that needs replaced, sidewalks that need to be replaced, ADA ramps are going to get replaced, and any bad places in the road that needs to be dug out and beefed up and mill and resurface everything. So that'll be a huge, and again, very thankful to get those community crossing grants. That it really goes a long way. One other quick item here that I have. I've been working with Duke for seems like years. Well, it has been years. There's just no ways around it. Trying to get a good inventory on our street lights. I want to be able to get identifiers on each light, know exactly what we're paying for to make sure everything we're paying for is what's still in the system. At one time, they agreed to do that and then change everything over to LED. And that was an estimate of, in order to change everything over to LED, they wanted to charge us $115,730 to do that. Well, recently, I found that they've got a program to where they'll do it for free. So they can go and change all of our LED lights out, do an inventory on everything we've got. They're in the process of doing that now. I told them to go ahead and get started on it. This will, our street light on this particular contract for the street lights is like the old Cobra lights that are kind of a yellow hue now. We pay $1,946 a month for street lights. Once they change out the LED lights, we'll be paying about $1,604 a month. Plus, once the project's done, we get a rebate of $9,000. So just to let you know, I feel like that's a win and we'll be getting that taken care of. With that, I want to get council's thoughts too. I think I brought this up at one of the meetings earlier. The Broadway corridor, the plan was once it's completed and the new lights are in, all the old Cobra lights come down. I feel like it'll be kind of dark down through there. They've already changed one of these lights at Walnut Street that got broken off to the LED. It's white. It matches the other lights. It matches pretty good as far as color and everything goes. Right now it looks kind of odd because we've got white lights and then we have yellow lights and it's kind of mixed match. But if the council is okay with it, I would like to request that they leave those lights and just go ahead and swap them out to LEDs. There are a couple of poles that are crooked. I'd like for them to try to screw up a little bit, and if they need to reroute any power lines just to clean it up a little bit. So I would like to ask them to do that, but I wanted to get your blessing because it wasn't in the plan to keep those.
I think it's good.
Brighter the better,
And the businesses will get an advantage from that too,
Yeah.
just having.
as long as they'll match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they should match. The last thing that I've got for you this evening that I'm thinking of is, I don't know if anybody else has noticed that we've had some issues with waste management.
Yeah.
They've been a nightmare. It's been a challenge. They've had some growing pains buying people out, and we get a lot of the complaints in here at the office, and they've made it to where we really can't communicate with them. They want the property owners to go out to a portal and try to go that direction. Well, last week I notified them that we had to get things corrected, and they had to get corrected pretty quick. If not, I was going to go to the council and the attorney to see what it would take to get out of this. We got 3 more years left on this contract. That day, they said, we are taking you off of the Morristown routes and we're going to the Indy East side. So it's under a whole different group of people taking care of us. So keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully the service gets better. If not, let us know because I'm tired of it.
Yeah, make sure you call the town too.
Yeah.
Everybody that has a problem, you need to call in and let somebody know in the utility office.
That's all I have this evening.
Okay, Joe.
Joe, I had a question for you.
Yes.
I was concerned to hear that somebody came to me and said that in a public meeting where you were and Heath was, that Heath said that there would be no Summerfest and only fireworks. And I know that after our last town meeting, after the stuff that we heard about Winterfest, we might want to change some things about how we're doing the festivals, but we didn't say anything about not having festivals anymore. So do you know anything about that?
Said some activity to elaborate on something themselves a little bit. Oh, in fact, just at the end of last week, we were having some forward and try to get these ranges as good as we've ever ran.
So this meeting and so was Bob. And what Heath said was if he doesn't have someone like Natalie to do the vendors, Summer and Winterfest would look totally different, and that we would just have fireworks and maybe a couple food trucks or something like that. He never said we would not have it. And even Joe at that meeting said, oh, no, we want to have the festivals. We'll do what we can to make sure it happens. So.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I agree that we need somebody, somebody to run it, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Adam, you have anything?
Nothing for me.
Keith?
I don't have anything in particular. I do want to bring it to council that here within the next, let's just call it 2 meetings, I'm going to have a little bit more information as far as like parks plan and some other conversations, but I just don't have enough information yet to come to you guys and have a conversation about it. So I'm working on that right now. And to Vanessa's point, the goal is obviously to have that stuff, and working with Alex and Joe and, we need to kind of revamp everything that everybody had brought to question as far as maybe some of the contractual stuff is all being addressed at this point in time. So we're trying to address that in a way that's going to allow us to move forward with everything.
Should be involved in out what we're going to do with our contracts and stuff instead of just you guys by yourselves.
It's not necessary that we do, but
You will be. Again, my goal is to get something on paper that looks okay, kind of how Joe does it with, hey, here's what it was, here's a red line, and then you guys take a look at it as a group and go through it and figure out from there kind of what that looks like. So it's not, hey, here's what we're doing. Like, I don't want to bring that to you guys until we get that stuff done.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yep.
Patrick,
Well, I was gonna have the 2024 report finished up and hand to you guys for the next meeting to go over, but I'm still waiting on numbers from the SWAT team, the fact team, and some end of year financials. But I did want to point out that 2024, the Fortville Police Department handled 16,273 calls, average of 44.58 a day, compared to 33.01 in 2023. 23.76 in 2022 and 16.75 in 2021. The past 4 years, we've seen about a 35% increase every year on our calls for service. So I'm going to detail that for everyone. It's probably not a shock. It was a shock to see some of the arrest statistics for me, where a lot of our arrests come from. But you're forewarned, next meeting might be even longer one.
Nice.
Other than that,
You're saying there's more arrests?
I'm sorry.
You're saying there's more arrests or what's the?
Yeah, there's more arrests. There's 4,000 more calls like there has been every year for the past 4 years. And we've gained 4 officers in 4 years. So we're, our guys are busy.
Have you any thoughts about what's causing all the addition? But what's causing the growth of the calls and the arrests? I mean, it sounds disproportionate to the growth of the population, no?
No, not
Or
really.
you're saying it is proportionate and that's
It is
kind of how it is?
proportionate, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and we're a thoroughfare, you know, people go from, 70 to 69 to us. They go from Indianapolis to Muncie, Detroit, all that to us. That's the way it's always been. It's just now we're seeing more people and a lot more of it, and people are using our town. And, it honestly, it didn't have much appeal 15 years ago. Not a lot of people came to town unless they wanted to go to a bar and get a fight. And now there's a lot more appeal to come to Fortville, and, more people is more problems. In my business, that's generally what happens. So,
Oh, okay. Thanks.
yeah,
No problem.
it's true.
Adriana, is there anything from the clerk's office?
No, nothing from me unless someone has any questions.
Thank you. Alex, anything from you?
I don't have anything unless you have questions.
Alex, I have a question for you about resolution 2024-2A, town council decorum. Can you describe whether we should be introducing topics as infamous with commentary like that? Is it okay for me to describe somebody's repugnant Dora proposal or their ridiculous beautification ideas?
So I don't have the resolution in front of me. I didn't find the infamous comment to be in violation of it, but I don't know if we want to litigate that right here.
It's stating an opinion before we've discussed it.
Well, I think that might be out of context on the resolution. The intent and one of the issues in that resolution is for any individual council member making a representation to the public or some other person or entity that the council as a majority has decided or has taken a certain position. That's not in the resolution says not to do that. each of you has your own opinions that you can express as an individual council member or resident or, human being as you see fit. And there's nothing in the resolution, I think, that would.
Well, the resolution says we're supposed to be respectful to each other. So I think deriding somebody's topic before it's been discussed, I think is in violation of that. I was just curious for your opinion on it. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment? Thanks, Bob. You gotta come up to the mic.
Come up to the mic.
Only,
Have you
there we
already
go.
met me? Probably from infamous Facebook posts. Tanya, I've tried to have multiple conversations with you and you've said, nah, after you offered. I don't know what your reasoning truly is. I don't know what your end goal is. Joe, I know you. I've known you for 30 years. Anyways. So I've got some questions. You brought up the wastewater treatment plant. Who should I be asking questions to? Should I be asking you, Joe? Should I be asking you, Tanya? Or should I be asking the one that runs it?
What? Water plant?
Mm-hmm.
Pump.
So that's who I should be asking, not you, even though you offered to have conversations, yes? You probably don't remember, you deleted comments. That's all right. So, next, you think it's fine.
I'm not saying anything.
You don't have to. Your
I know
body language also reads with your disrespect of
Okay.
infamous.
Okay.
So that infamous post on Facebook that she was referring to was because a lot of us are concerned why this was not discussed. We live in Indiana. Most of you have lived here, what, 50, 60 years? We have snow. Why was this not discussed ahead of time? Why did we have to wait for snow? Why did we have to wait for a dump to try to come up with a plan? That's what our concern is as citizens of this town. You talk to other town managers and find out that they don't do this or they don't do that. Indianapolis is apples to oranges or Studebakers, whatever you want to consider it. We as people of Fortville have high standards. And we should. We shouldn't be looking to be like every other town or every other city. We should look to be ourselves, not follow everybody else's lead. So let's have a little bit of higher standard here and get things done before, as an old boss used to use the phrase with me, the tail wagging the dog, because that's exactly what this was with the snow removal. And that's exactly what it's been with the wastewater treatment plant. So, Tanya, you're off the hook. I'll be sending my emails to Dave. But I would like to know, whoever is running the Town Fortville website, when are we going to have a posting of the 2024 water test results? Do we have an idea on that?
We have to find out from Dave. So as soon as he receives those results, he gives them to Andy and they get posted right away.
I believe that there's at least one council person that already has the results.
Really?
So I would like to know when those will be turned in, when those will be posted for the public. Because last year, 2023 wasn't posted until June or July. And then to find out that there were violations on said report.
Well, I can check with Dave on that. I couldn't speak to that because I'm not familiar with that.
That's sad that you're not familiar with the reports.
Mhm. Well, I do know that
So
we test the water every day. Every single day, the water is tested. It's being kept at the water treatment plant. They to create a monthly report. The MROs that he sends out to IDEM for review. And then toward the end of the year, when they do an year-end report, it may not happen right at the end of the year. It could take, a few months before it's all approved and looked over.
So is that public knowledge that we can, as a citizen, can obtain?
Absolutely. Should.
All right. So maybe before we say water is safe, we actually have the actual results for everyone to see.
Super. And the daily test he takes, it is extremely safe.
Joe, I'm inclined to agree. I communicated with Dave back and forth asking for test results, and at first he sent me to the 2023 results. And then, because I said, you know, we had just been discussing about the water quality, and I said, can you point me to the latest results? And he sent me to the 2023 results, and I said, no, we must have results more recent than that, because he was up here saying he takes results weekly. So I said, you know, please send, yeah, and I said, please send more recent results. And he sent me results, you know, a couple of different sets of results that weren't marked with the right thresholds or anything to be able to understand the results. And we had to kind of go back and forth and back and forth. Then he sent an email, you know, and I was just listening when you brought it up. But now that she's mentioning the same thing, I have to say, he and I went back and forth, and then he sent an email to me saying, the water's good now. You know, actually, we've done some kind of tweak and the water's good now. And then you sent us an internal email kind of reflecting what he had said, you know, the water's good now. And my last message to him was, I said, you know, good, please send me the results. And then he didn't. And then now, you know, and I've never heard anything more about it. And what I found interesting was that was months ago. And so if the water was good then why are we hearing a new update now that just now the water is good? And like, when is the water good? Can we see all the results? What are the thresholds? Because there are thresholds everywhere where you're testing water samples of things, there will be a minimal threshold below which it's not okay and above which it's okay. And the samples that he sent me didn't have these thresholds. I had to actually go look them up online and send him thresholds from, you know, state and federal standards and say, you know, are these the thresholds you're using? And so I kind of have the same question. It seems like this is going on and on and on, and we need to get to a point. Again, I mean, if this were a software engineering project, you'd establish a goal value, and when you hit that value, you're good. And you quit messing with it. And then, but if you're not good yet, at some point you've got to ask, why aren't you good yet? And at the November 4th meeting, I believe it was, or thereabouts, November 5th, maybe, I had asked, I think there was maybe a third party person up here, it was somebody who was not Dave Thompson. And I was saying, what's the typical time it takes to tweak a new water plant until the water's good? And they said 3 to 6 months, or no, they said 2 to 3 months. And I had made the point that in federal engineering contracts, you get about a 100% slip before it's an absolute stand down situation. 6 months should have been the maximum amount of time before which we should all be getting into oversight mode. And 6 months would have happened back around April of last year. So I'm kind of sitting here with the same question. And I'm a little bit bewildered about why I was getting a personal email from Dave, like maybe that was like 2 or 3 months ago, saying, well, we're good now. But there were no data to support that statement. And then, you know, maybe he just dropped the email. Maybe our email thread just kind of dropped off. But if we were good then why are we also, again, just getting good now? And then where are the results?
We're not just not good. It's getting better. I did bring it up several meetings ago. In fact, Mr. Stewart asked in a public meeting about it, and I did an update on the water quality. It is good. It's been good. You strive to make it better. We get crystal clear. And just because it's good doesn't mean we don't continue to try to improve on it.
I think it's a little bit of a shell game because he's been up here saying the water's good at the same time that town residents, including me, were experiencing brown water and all kinds of different anomalies. So the two can't be true at the same time. And that's why we go back to where's the water data. There are a number of people in town who are actually very educated about water quality data. And all of these people I've spoken with are concerned because they're not seeing the data match up to the statements. So, I mean, I don't know. Because the question's been why do people continue to have brown water, discolored water, whatever it is now and again? And the answers we get back are, well, you know, we don't know why it is, or it's random, it's here.
It happens everywhere though. It's not just here. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. But it does happen everywhere. It's great.
Just saying it happened everywhere, Tanya.
But
Still, making as crystal clear as we can possibly make it.
isn't making your cat throw up and making humans throw up, then it's okay, you know, and there's a difference. Improving from okay water to amazing water is one thing. Going from brown water that's causing nausea to just okay water, that's a different matter. And I think we're having a shell game of which it is. So I mean, I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to bring that up because I'm kind of having the same experience. I'm not able to get my hands on any kind of data that would reassure people. And if there were, we should publish it to reassure everybody. Because people are still having their clothes get discolored in the wash. My cat throws up every time I feed the cat tap water, like every single time, immediately, like instant throw up. So, you know, what is all this? And that's why we're looking for data, really. That's all. So I just wanted to, you know, add my comments to hers that I'm inclined to agree. I don't really understand what's going on right now. Maybe I'll follow up with Mr. Thompson. That's probably something that I should do next.
Yep. I love it. Yeah. Well, that's the reason why we don't have a conversation because of that. Because of the way you just acted. It's the way you just acted. You can't have a civil conversation. Anybody else have public comment? Okay. Council comments? Brian?
No, thank you.
I have none. Vanessa?
I don't have anything more infamous to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. We need a motion to approve and sign vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve and sign vouchers.
Opposed? Make a motion to adjourn at 9:02.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Get these guys to come up.